Welcome to Canton Confidential. Tonight, we're diving into yet another dramatic day in the murder case of Karen Reed. Thanks for joining us. I'm Glenn Jones.
I'm J.C. Monahan. Judge Beverly Cannone says jury selection will begin on April 1st. Now, that's despite a request by the defense to delay the start of the trial. NBC 10's John Maroney has the latest from outside court in Dedham.
We will start April 1st with impanelment.
Karen Reed's second murder trial will start as scheduled, despite concerns it could be upended. Reed's accused of killing her boyfriend, John O'Keefe.
It might be more prudent and less perilous for the case if we were to put this case over for at least a few weeks.
The defense has asked the First Circuit Court of Appeals to dismiss 2 of 3 charges against Reed, including second-degree murder. It's unclear how or when the federal court will rule, so both sides suggested a delay until April 25th. Judge Cannone said no, given how long it'll take to get another jury pool.
At a minimum, 10 weeks. I'm not going to do that.
Could I have hit him?
The state is asking for a courthouse buffer zone. At the first trial, there was a 200-foot exclusion. The Commonwealth now wants to give law enforcement the power to arrest violators and expand that zone.
Especially on the left side of the courthouse, where it seems to be a bit of attention, noise, and potential adverse influence to the jury.
Reed and Aidan Kearney, a.k.a. Turtleboy, appeared at a separate hearing. Prosecutors want access to phones belonging to Kearney, looking for communications between the blogger and Reed. Prosecutors maintain both of them worked together to intimidate witnesses.
Just because people speak, the government gets to ferret around in their phones. It's a horrifying concept, Your Honor.
They want to create a sense to dehumanize anything that they don't like.
In Reed's hearing, spirited exchanges between the prosecution and defense prompted this from Judge Cannone.
I suggest that we take the personal attacks completely out of this. Hold on. Both sides.
The trial is over for the day. They'll be back here on Tuesday, hoping to wrap everything up before the trial starts April 1st. In Dedham, John Maroney, NBC 10 Boston.
We are joined now by attorney Morgietta Dourcier. Morgietta, so good to see you.
So good to see you again.
So much happened today. As you heard, the judge says, no, we're starting April 1st. We're going to find our jury, but we're not going to swear them in right away to make sure there's no double jeopardy. I've never heard of that. How common is it? And can you just explain what that means?
I think that was the right call by Judge Cannone. As she said before, they pretty much summoned 400 people just to get down to the number that they really wanted. And that's a challenging task. As it pertains to double jeopardy, you can have as many jurors essentially called, but once they get sworn in, that's when their legal requirement as a jury begins. So if they get a decision by the federal court prior to that, I think, as Judge said, she would rehear the motion. But it's safe in terms of Karen Reed's constitutional rights to have the jury picked, but just not sworn in.
Okay.
All right. So today, Karen Reed's legal team revealed new details about their third-party culprit defense strategy. I want everyone to lean forward and listen very closely to what David Unetti had to say about it in court today.
We don't have to prove or narrow it to one potential third-party culprit.
Are you saying it's several?
3, yes.
Okay, so can you tell me the 3 that you say it is?
Sure. So the potential third-party culprits that we have identified are Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, and Colin Albert.
There you have it. Very clearly stated. All 3 are expected to be called as witnesses by the prosecution. So just that everybody at home can follow suit here. Brian Albert owns the house where John O'Keefe was found on the lawn. Colin Albert is his son. And Brian Higgins is the ATF agent who was flirtatious with Karen Reed. So now the judge needs to decide what to do here. She says she wants to see evidence of these people being responsible somehow in the death of John O'Keefe before she allows the third-party culprit defense. Put this all into context for us.
I think that's the right call. Here, we already have an explosive case, right? We already have evidence that's going to be presented. Now we're talking about new people who could potentially be criminally liable for what happened. We're talking about constitutional potential violations. We're talking about issues about their protection and their privacy. I think what we're really waiting for is that key piece of evidence. How are you going to tie all of this together. And I think you don't want to expose that to the jury unless you have that concrete train that you're going to connect.
But isn't this potentially an overreach for the defense? There's no burden on them to prove that anybody else did this. They only have to prove that Karen Read didn't, or at least the Commonwealth has to prove that Karen Read did it.
Absolutely. And I think what they're trying to impose is a credibility issue, right? Let's get all of the credibility issues out in the forefront regarding these potential third-party culprits that they're trying to impose in this case. But really, they have to have the evidence to tie it all together.
Well, okay, really quick, because we're almost out of time for this. But if those were my family members, if that was my son, I would be enraged that their names were said in open court without anything to back it up so far. But now it's out there.
And I think we're most likely after this particular segment, we're going to see some paperwork. I would be surprised if I represented them. And I believe in the last trial that each of them had an attorney. I would be typing away to try to present some sort of gag order or cease and desist or something to protect them, because now their information and their alleged culpability is out there and they need to be protected.
Big drama.
Okay. Attorney Morgietta Doracier, so nice to have you back. So good to see you. Thank you.
Yeah.
This high-profile case is the focus of a new docuseries released by Investigation Discovery. All 5 episodes of A Body in the Snow, the Karen Read trial, are now available to watch. The docuseries is riveting. It is revealing. Joining us now is the executive producer of the series, Terry Dunn Meurer. Your access, Terry, to Karen Read is unlike anything we've seen since this story began 3+ years ago. Give us an idea of how much time you spent with her and what your impressions of her were as your central character in this documentary.
We were in Boston for 3 months, a couple weeks before the trial began, and then throughout the entire trial. And then we actually went back in August to pick up some other interviews. So we were there for the entire trial. It was an intense situation. We were there trying to be a fly on the wall because they had a job to do, which is to prepare for the trial every day, to prepare their defense. And we just did the best we could to cover that. It was basically a follow documentary where we don't even know what's going to happen the next day.
You know, your interview questions with Karen Read were quite revealing in that, as an audience, we haven't heard much from her. She described it as her testimony. What's your sense of how she came across to the public in your docuseries?
I think Karen came across as who she is, and that was really important to her. She wanted to tell her story the way she wanted to tell it, and that's what we tried to. There's a lot of footage we shot, but that's what we tried to do, was to have Karen be Karen in the documentary.
And, well, let's back up a little bit. How did you find this case, Terry? Or maybe how did this case find you? Because my sense is that even before the trial began, you had a hunch this would capture the imagination of a lot of people.
You know, this case, as you said, actually found me. I had heard of the Karen Read case. I was finishing up another project and got a call from an attorney who was representing Karen and Alan and kind of selling their rights, I guess, and asked if I was interested in doing this, a follow doc throughout the trial. And I was, like, really? That's an awesome opportunity. I've never heard of that kind of access, but hopped on a Zoom with Karen and Alan, and a month later we were filming in Boston.
So give us a better understanding about how rare that is. You described how this story found you. Is that the way most of your work goes when you're creating a documentary?
No, usually we find a story and then we pitch it to one of the buyers. So this has never happened before in my career, and I think it's relatively unusual. There was another series that was done years ago called The Staircase, and Karen even referenced that series where a defendant hired a documentary team to come in and film film what was going on throughout that process. I think it was about 13 episodes, and it spanned a long period of time. So Karen referenced that and kind of said, I am a staircase, and that's how I want my story told.
All right, Terry Dunn Meurer, thank you so much for spending some time with us, the executive producer of A Body in the Snow, the trial of Karen Read. You can see all of the episodes. They're available now, streaming on Max. We're joined now by NBC 10 courtroom insider Sue O'Connell, who was interviewed for that docuseries. Of course, I was very surprised when she told me how this whole thing started, where they came to her. But in any case, we should talk as well about this relationship between Karen Read and Aidan Kearney, also known as Turtleboy. It was discussed in the docuseries, and there was a court proceeding today that involved both of them. And at one point, the defense team for Karen Read dramatically entered the courtroom as Aidan was going through a hearing. What is going on here? This has to do with cell phones and who was talking to who, when. Where does it all land?
So remember, Aidan Kearney has been charged with witness intimidation. They have had his cell phones and they have had his information, the prosecution has. Prosecutor Brennan is alleging that Karen and Aidan had communications, and he wants to see those communications, right? And Karen and her team had all the rights in the world to be in the courtroom today, and I think they did a little theater the way that they entered, sort of crashing in and getting the judge's attention. But this was Prosecutor Brennan and the Commonwealth wanting to see more information from Aidan Kearney's cell phones.
Well, we should make clear that there was a federal grand jury did not find that Karen Read was guilty of any sort of
they did not indict
intimidation charges. So then help me here. Let's just go on the assumption, sure, yes, they colluded together. She gave him information, and it was to intimidate witnesses, et cetera, and it's all there. What do you do with that? I mean, is it to get more charges against her, or is it just to put it out there that she's guilty because nobody else would do that?
So if you're worried about government overreach, you think it's a fishing expedition, right? That they are looking into a citizen's phone to get more information. None of us want anybody going through our phones at any time. So that's definitely an argument as to why that it shouldn't happen. An argument as to why it should happen is that Brennan is looking for some admission of guilt, some consciousness of guilt that Karen may have communicated to Aidan Kearney in some way, shape, or form that he can then bring in as evidence and say, look, she said this. So it's not necessarily, I don't think, about the witness intimidation issue or the sharing of evidence or leaking of evidence, which she's also, allowed to do. And
admitted it in the docuseries.
Yep, has not broken any laws in that fashion. But did she say anything at all in the communications that they may or may not have that leads them to think, well, look, she said she did it. She said she did this, or this conflicts with another one of her statements. I mean, I doubt very much. Aidan's already been on X today saying that they communicated through Signal, so there's probably nothing there for them to find because that's an encrypted end-to-end communication form. But again, this does bring serious issues about what the government can do when it comes to your cell phones.
Sue, we're going to have to discuss this the next time, but I wonder if we take these two things, the relationship with Turtleboy and igniting the start of this docuseries, if maybe Karen Read was drawn to the spotlight and it could burn her in the end.
Listen, if I'm ever arrested for a crime, I am not going to shop my documentary in advance to anybody. I don't want to be on record saying anything. But again, she wanted to tell her story, and she did.
All right, Sue O'Connell, thank you very much. I want to make one quick correction before we wrap up here tonight. Colin Albert is the nephew of Brian Albert, not his son. I apologize for the mistake. As we continue to follow the latest developments on Karen Read's upcoming retrial, jury selection is set to start on April 1st. Be sure to stay with us and our sister station, NECN, for live coverage. Every night of the trial, tune in at 7 for Canton Confidential, right here on NBC 10 Boston.